Let's have a look at each of the components in a BPMS, starting with the process modeling tool. The process modeling tool allows business process developers to create and to modify executable process models by specifying execution properties that we have discussed before. We then can store and retrieve and manage those executable process models from the process model repository via the process modeling tool. Another functionality that the process modeling tool in a BPMS offers is the ability to import conceptual process models designed by process analysts into the BPMS so that business process developers can add the necessary details to make them executable. This is an example of a process modeling tool, namely BonitaSoft Bonita Open Solutions. We see that we have on the one hand a process model, and on the other hand below it we have for each task the information we need to start that task, to pass data to the task, and also what we need to do when we complete the task and we need to hand over to the next task. This is another example of a process modeling tool. This one is part of IBM Process Manager. We also see that we have a process model and that we can take one task in that process model and start specifying all the details that are required essentially to breathe life into the task to make it start, as well as the details we need when the task is completed. The second component of a BPMS is the execution engine. The execution engine has, in essence, roughly speaking, three functions. On the one hand, it is responsible for consuming events that trigger new instances of the process model. In other words, it is responsible for instantiating the process model, that is, creating new instances of the process. It is also responsible for orchestrating the distribution of work that happens in a given process instance. When a task is executed in a process instance, its instantiation is called a work item. Work items are assigned to the process participants or to the services with which the BPMS communicates. The execution engine is responsible for detecting when should work items start and for managing the life cycle of those work items. The execution engine is also responsible for recording all the events that happen while the process is being executed. The third component of a BPMS is the worklist handler. Think about it as an inbox. The worklist handler gets work items from the execution engine and in essence offers it to the process participants. Process participants then commit to performing these work items. They enter the data necessary for the performance of those work items, and eventually they submit back that data to the execution engine, by that signaling in some cases the completion of the work item. The worklist handler is also responsible for managing the work queues, which are the list of work items that a given process participant should perform, and to prioritize the work items in the queue according to certain priority rules that are defined when we define the executable process model. Worklist handlers nowadays provide a range of other functionality such as social networking capabilities. An example of a worklist handler is shown here. It comes from BonitaSoft Bonita Open Solutions. We can see that in this worklist handler, a given worker can see their to-do tasks. They can, for a given task, see the description of the task, which once it has been instantiated is called a work item, and they can grab the task, put it in different states, and enter data related to the task, and at the end submit the task as being completed, which will tell the business process management systems that the corresponding task is completed and that the next tasks should be scheduled and put into the work list of the corresponding participants.